Welcome everyone, StealthyShiroean here, and today I'm bringing you my review of the Humble Choice Bundle for June 2026. We have another month of games with several being really good additions to the library, even if you might not think so at a glance. Let me know what you think of this month's bundle in the comments below, be sure to check the timestamps for specific games, and stay tuned for my final thoughts in the end. Okay, let's get to the review. Starting off the bundle this month is Overlooting, an auto-battler game. And yeah, you can click on the enemies to attack if you really want to, but do you really want to do that? I switched it over to auto-battler and turbo speed, the fastest setting, pretty early on, and a complete run still took me the entire hour I put into the game. I'm not one for these kinds of games, but I felt this one was especially boring. At the end of every fight, you get the choice between some weapon or armor to outfit your hero. They each belong to various categories that give you additional buffs the more you utilize a particular set. There's various rarities, and if you receive a duplicate, then it can be used to upgrade existing gear. Occasionally, you'll be gifted with potions that I suppose can be used a bit more strategically, but that's really a stretch to say there's any strategic depth to this at all. There's very little in the way to affect the RNG, so you're essentially just at the whims of whatever the game decides. I got lucky with my first go of it because I ended up getting a build that allowed me to counterattack easily, along with a lifesteal that consistently raised my armor. None of the fights were challenging, but even had they been, I'm not sure there would have been much I could have done to mitigate that, other than start over. Needless to say, I'm okay with never looking back at this one and letting it collect virtual dust in my library. Next up is Hellclock, an action RPG that I actually covered here on the channel. You could check out my video for the full thoughts, but maybe take my complaints with a grain of salt. And that's because the devs have been cooking since I last made that review. I started up a new game and followed the recommendation from past me to play it on veteran difficulty instead of normal. Given my first hour, I'd still recommend that, as the difficulty felt fine, if even being a bit easy, at least in the beginning. Movement has been improved and feels more fluid than it did before, although I didn't have as much of a problem with that. However, the case with creating builds being cumbersome and confusing seems to no longer be the case. Now you can make and save multiple builds, as well as search for items that have specific tags to them, such as lifesteal or critical chance, to fine-tune each build. Additionally, equipment can now be stored and swapped out for various builds as well, which wasn't the case before. And I realize as I say all this that this probably should have been a no-brainer to have on launch. And hey, you might be right to think so, but I'm happy that it's here. Anyway, Hellclock itself is a fast-paced action RPG that rewards people who love to build craft. Between all the abilities and the different relics, along with the level up passives you gain during a run, you could come up with some really crazy builds that may even seem game-breaking at times. I tend to be someone who will choose the same skills and spam them until the end of the game, but Hellclock even made me experiment as I started gaining items where I could see how they might synergize with something else. With all the improvements, including some to the endgame which I didn't touch at all this time around, and with what the game already offers, this is beyond a doubt a great addition that shouldn't be passed up if you're into action RPGs. We're back at it again with another simulator game, this time of the construction variety. Construction Simulator takes you to small town USA or Europe, or I guess South American spaceport if you have the DLC, and partakes in a bunch of construction jobs. I chose good old nondescript Sunny Haven, USA, and started my future as a construction worker. There is an attempt at some kind of story. Sunny Haven is bleeding people, and apparently these construction efforts will breathe new life into the town. It's there, but I almost think it would be better if it wasn't. I really can't stand these characters failing hard at being people. To be fair, it's actually passable in Construction Simulator. But getting down to brass tacks, gameplay will have you take the reins of several different construction machines, from big rigs to flatbed trucks to giant cranes. I imagine for those looking for that kind of experience, then this probably checks that box with flying colors. Each control's slightly different, but the control scheme for the most part is similar. I did find them a bit wonky to play, but I think continued playtime would iron out whatever issues I had, especially when it came to maneuvering the cranes. Like many of these simulator games that came in Humble Choice before, this just doesn't do it for me. However, I could see the appeal. Additionally, you could jump into a multiplayer game and run jobs together, which is neat. Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector was a good reminder for me that I need to actually get around to finishing the original game we got back in March 2024. And that's high praise considering I don't usually gravitate to these sorts of games. Citizen Sleeper 2, and the first one, for those who don't know, is a narrative-focused RPG. There's a lot of reading, and if you're not about that, then yeah, this might not be for you. That being said, the writing is excellent. My whole hour, I was hooked even with the shaky start and not completely understanding everything that was going on. From what I could remember from the first game, it seems the sequel follows a similar start. You're an escaped android that serves some sort of company, or in the sequel's case, an individual, and you're trying to gain your freedom. It starts right away with an escape, but your ship needs repairs, so it's up to random exploration and odd jobs on a station to fund the supplies needed. The actual gameplay revolves around dice that roll at the start of every cycle. These dice can be spent on actions and have various degrees of success based on how high the value of the die is. It forces players to think carefully on how to spend their actions. Other factors play a role, like stress causing your dice to break, or not having enough energy for certain tasks. I actually felt the standard difficulty was a bit punishing after running completely out of supplies on one mission, and having everyone completely stressed out by the end. It made me think how things might have been different if I planned out my expedition a bit more. And that's another new addition to the game, being crewmates and contracts in greater local space area around the station. Both offer up some new complexity and gameplay mechanics that weren't present in the first. All in all, I definitely want to play this one at some point after I finally get around to playing through the first one. Next up, we have Indika, a third-person adventure game where you take the role of Indika, a young nun trying to understand herself and her place in the world. The game presents itself largely as a third-person adventure set in an alternative history bleak Russian landscape. However, at times, the game takes an old-school 2D perspective to break things up and showcase Indika's life before the monastery. Visually, the game is striking, but it's really the story that comes in strong. It's funny at times, dark, and weird.
Господи Иисус, ты что ты делаешь? Ты вообще, тут Нашка!
Монашка.
Монашка тут!
Монахиня.
Слушай, тебе повезло, что ты на меня наткнулась. Я Машу, я не меткий, я...
I genuinely had no idea what was going to happen next, and that was a good thing, really. It kept everything engaging without entirely being over the top. Indika's own inner voice seems to be more than that, and if the Steam page is any indication, it seems she has the devil along for the ride. As far as I could tell, there's no combat in the game, so don't expect anything like that. Gameplay revolves around the story and occasionally the various puzzles that Indika needs to figure out in order to continue her adventure. Nothing seemed too difficult though, so I imagine this is largely just to break things up. The story alone was enough for me to want to return to this. Luckily, the game is only around 4 hours, so it makes it for an easy one to play through on a weekend.
Oh my god! This year's Caledon University artist in residence sent my mom foot pics?
I guess there are just some things about your mom you don't know.
Ugh, I'm gonna throw up.
In this new installment of Life is Strange, players find themselves in the shoes of Max Caulfield once again. Although, since I've never played a Life is Strange game with her in it, I didn't really know her backstory besides the fact that she had some sort of relationship with a blue-haired girl named Chloe. However, it also means that I'm not coming into this with any sort of nostalgia goggles, for better or worse. The first hour of the game is largely the setup for the greater conflict. Max is best friends with Safi, and they are graduate students, I think, at Caledon University, a school nestled in a small college town in Vermont. The game does a good job setting up their relationship, along with Max interacting with some of the other characters along the way. I thought the banter was fun, if maybe cringy at times. The acting and facial animations did a lot to make their exchanges believable, though. Anyway, Safi is murdered. Yeah, a spoiler I guess, but it's literally right on the store page, so not really. That's about as far as I got. However, Life is Strange is always about people with powers. Max apparently can travel back in time. Although, as told by the Steam page, in Double Exposure, she somehow gains the ability to step between two different timelines, which is a pretty cool concept. This is going to be another game where the narrative has to grip you if you actually want to give the game a chance. Personally, it did for me. However, once again, I don't plan on playing this until I actually play the previous Life is Strange games. We are on a roll with our third tower defense in a row given in Humble Choice. Although, the Riftbreaker isn't quite your usual tower defense in that it adds base building into the mix. You control a mech landing on an alien world. Your goal is to build up your base, exploit its resources, and destroy all the wildlife angry at your imperialistic tendencies. There is a story campaign along with a survival mode. There's even multiplayer if you're so inclined. The core of it is that you build up factories to gain resources to build defenses. All of these things need to be powered by various structures such as wind turbines, solar panels, or power plants. A variety of these things need to be built as they aren't always 100% effective all the time. As you expand your base and upgrade the buildings, then it attracts aggressive alien species dead set on wiping you out. Alongside your defenses, the mech suit lets you jump right into the thick of combat with a variety of weapons like machine guns, swords, and flamethrowers. It felt really satisfying cutting down hordes of enemies, with the flamethrower being especially fun to use as it just lights everything up. The game actually reminded me a bit of Age of Darkness, which was a horde survival real-time strategy that my wife and I had a ton of fun playing. I think I'd like to return to this, but with a second copy in hand for some multiplayer. Our headliner this month is the JRPG Octopath Traveler 2. I've wanted to play the original for a while now after seeing its beautiful fusion of 3D meets 2D pixel art. Octopath Traveler 2 brings more of that iconic aesthetic, along with 8 new characters to play as. In fact, despite the number 2, the game itself is entirely standalone from the first one. After an intense contemplation, which really was just my daughter choosing for me, I started the game with Ochette, the Beast Girl Huntress. Her small island has a beast people village living alongside a human village, and they don't seem to like one another. There's talk of some sort of calamity that will blight the land, and my hour ended with a giant monster attacking the village. Combat is interesting in that it starts with a phase of trying to figure out the monster's weaknesses to exploit them and break their defense. Then you can boost your attacks in order to deal finishing blows. Additionally, each traveler has their own unique job skills, with Ochette's being the ability to capture monsters and summon them in battle. She could also turn captured monsters into resources, which have a variety of uses, one of which was befriending villagers, who can then be used in battle as well. It was a really refreshing system that can keep battles interesting. I enjoyed my time with this, and definitely see myself coming back to it at some point. Okay, let's wrap this up and see if this bundle is worth it or not. I based my rating solely on whether I thought the game was worth playing on about an hour or so of hands-on gameplay. Also, I'd be grateful if you could please give the video a like if you're enjoying it, and subscribe if you want to see more video game coverage in the form of reviews, first impressions, and of course, these humble choice videos every month. And if you're feeling extra generous, then you could tip me via YouTube Super Thanks or consider joining my YouTube membership. Every little bit goes a long way in helping improve the channel. Overall, this is a solid month. There are some really good games thrown into this bundle that the ones I wasn't that keen on don't really bring it down. I'm not sure how good of a choice Octopath Traveler 2 was for the headliner to attract people to buy the bundle, but I'm not complaining. The rest of the lineup is a really good supporting cast, so without further ado, let's get into the recommendations. At the top with the must-plays is, well, nothing. I know I said this was a solid month, and it is. I just didn't feel there were any games where I felt like I absolutely needed to get back to. Although in many of those instances, it wasn't really the game's fault, just me wanting to play the prequels or return to the game in multiplayer, etc. In the strong recommendations is most of the bundle actually, being Hellclock, Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector, Indika, Life is Strange Double Exposure, the Riftbreaker, and Octopath Traveler 2. Hellclock was a good game when I played it originally, and it seems like the devs really put in the work to improve so many aspects of the game that were once flaws. Citizen Sleeper 2 brings more of the unique world from the first game, along with its excellent writing and dice action system. Indika was a true surprise in that I never really knew what to expect with it. I could honestly see this being something I'd consider a must-play in the future if the story pans out by the end. Life is Strange seemed to be a solid entry into the franchise, and I enjoyed the way they executed their storytelling even if I don't have the history with Max or any of the previous Life is Strange games. The Riftbreaker was a fun base builder tower defense that had satisfying combat and was something I'd love to play in multiplayer in the future. Octopath Traveler 2 brings many unique things to the table for a JRPG, and I look forward to playing it again, especially to see how the game changes based on the different characters you play as. In my week recommendations, I place Construction Simulator. Yeah, you probably thought I was going to put this into Don't Bother With, huh? In the end, I decided that I could see the satisfaction in completing construction jobs, and the ability to use all those different machines could be appealing. Truth be told, the game did sit on my wish list for a while before I ultimately took it off believing it wasn't for me. And yeah, I was right for the most part. Finally, in my Don't Bother With section is Overlooting, an auto battler with minimal player decisions and it's all up to RNG and, auto battling? Yeah, that was always going to be a hard pass for me. But it does have a very positive score on Steam, so if it happens to float your boat, then by all means, please enjoy. Do you agree with my thoughts? What games, if any, are you looking forward to playing? Let me know what your thoughts are if there are any different recommendations you'd make in the comments below. I hope this video helped you in some small way, and if it did, then please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, or whatever it is you feel like doing. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.